Peace and blessings, everybody. Chrysalis Sun here with BeTheBot.com, and I'm here to add another addition to What Kills Sisterhood, my Sisterhood series, this open dialogue that we're having about all the different topics and issues within sisterhood. And today I want to talk about something, a very interesting topic, something that is very prevalent within sisterhood, which is slut-shaming. Okay, so I'm actually going to start this off by sharing a story. So several years ago when I was living in Vegas, I was part of a collective, an artist group, and we all lived in the same house. So it was like 8 of us. We lived in a 5-bedroom house, real hippie-ish, and pretty much all women. And so at some point, of course, being a hippie group and an artist collective, we always had a bunch of people coming in and out, people hanging around, lots of parties, kickbacks and things like that. And at some point, we ended up attracting a very young sister who started coming around. She was very much drawn to us, very intrigued by us and our lifestyle, what we were about. However, she was very promiscuous, very overly sexual. And so for me, I don't really judge sisters that are overly sexual because I'm sexual, so I recognize and honor that mirror. I'm not threatened by it. However, the other women in the collective were very much threatened by her. So they started speaking bad about her, started spreading rumors about her, started ostracizing her, slut-shaming her to her face and behind her back. And in turn, she started sleeping with a lot of people's partners. Now, I don't know if she would have just already been doing that or if she was provoked to do it out of spite because of how she was treated. But either way, it started to happen, which made the women in the collective even more hostile towards her. And then eventually she ended up sleeping with my partner, and, which actually led to the breakup, with me and my partner. They ended up breaking up with me and then going off with her, so it was, it is what it is with that. Now, the reason why I bring this up, this story, is because this is a very common dynamic between women, right? So there's it seems to be like two types of women in a dynamic. There's those that are the ones who are like, that have that Mother Mary, type archetype, and then the Jezebel archetype. So you have the one group of women who are, overly concerned with purity. And then you have another group in chastity, a certain level of chastity. And then you have another group of women who just like to fuck and don't care, and they're very embodied in their sexuality and they're promiscuous, and I say promiscuous in a way that's not demeaning. They like sex. They've realized their sexuality is actualized, and they're not afraid of it, and they're not afraid to show it, and they're not afraid of, taking whatever it is that they want, with that. And so I call that the Jezebel archetype. And, what I realize is that there needs to be a reconciliation with that archetype for women, specifically women of color, specifically Black women. Okay. And I'll tell you why. The reason why is because Jezebels and Jezebel types, so, the strippers, the escorts, the prostitutes, the gold digger, the other woman, all of those types of women, they have a sacred purpose. Those are specific. They're the personification of the sacred whore. They have an actual legitimate and sacred role within society. However, we live in a society that's not balanced. And so because our society doesn't know how to, 1, recognize them, and 2, honor them, and 3, we haven't cultivated a healthy sexuality within our society. So what ends up happening is these women are demonized, right? And what I find is that women are the worst ones to demonize these women. Like, these women are already abhorred, by men, and it's sad because men desire them, but men hate that they desire these types of women. you know, so men shit all over them, but then women, sisters shit all over them too, you know. So here's what it is, you know, Jezebel. Who is Jezebel? Jezebel was, you know, she's referenced in the Bible. Originally, she was a queen who was a troublemaker, a liar, a murderer. You know, she was a, you know, she was, well, basically what the story was is that, you know, she basically she was able to manipulate her king, you know, through her sexual power. And so she was basically able to talk her king into doing all kinds of crazy shit, which caused all kinds of havoc within, you know, the place that they ruled. And then eventually her people turned against her and killed her. You know, that's essentially who Jezebel is in the Bible. Now, originally Jezebel was associated with false prophets. You know, she was associated with false prophets and pagans. Right? So associated with people who were not Christian, you know, which back in those times, you know, if you were not Christian, you were a heretic, you know, and as a pagan, once you were labeled a pagan, you were labeled a heretic, and you could be put to death, you know. And so essentially, the original Jezebel was associated with witches, okay? Later on, she started to become associated with, you know, a woman, a loose woman, a promiscuous woman, a woman who's fallen from grace, a woman who's fallen from favors. So whores, prostitutes, mistresses, and again, basically women who use their power to get what they want, which is essentially what a witch is, you know. So technically, the Jezebel archetype and the persecution of the Jezebel is essentially an assault on women of power. Essentially, right? So then here you have these women coming into groups and sisters identifying them immediately, because when anytime a woman of power comes into an environment, she's sensed immediately, you know, and then she's immediately receives hostility and ill treatment, you know. And, you know, what it really boils down to in modern times is, you know, or really it's just an age-old conflict between the wife and the other woman, or the queen and the courtesan, you know. And it's this pitting against each other, because in reality, each woman wants to truly secretly be the other. So whenever the wife starts to shame the mistress of the other woman, or the Jezebel, it's because this woman is exhibiting a power and a side of herself that this wife does not have, but she feels like she doesn't have, is she wants to be that. And then on the flip side, whenever the Jezebel comes in and starts wreaking havoc on the wife, you know, it's really her anger towards her displacement in society and her not being respected. She wants the respect that the wife gets. She wants to be the wife, whereas the wife wants to be the Jezebel. And that's where the conflict is. And then we bring all that into sisterhood. Now, what I've noticed within sisterhood groups is, you know, sisters get upset when two types of women come into the picture: the Jezebel and the alpha female, which is typically typically the alpha female is a woman who's a warrior, you know. And every woman has the ability to be a warrior, but there's certain women that are warrior class, like that is them, you know, like they can't be, it's in their lineage, they can't be anything else. I'm a warrior woman, you know. So anytime I walk into a circle of women, if the women aren't connected to their own power, they're intimidated by me. The same way as when I see Jezebels walk into groups of, you know, sister groups or women's groups, and they see her actualizing her sexual power, you know, they mistreat her, you know, they ostracize her, you know. And so, you know, getting back to this conflict between the Mother Mary and the Jezebel, I see it. The best representation is The Handmaid's Tale. The best, you know, on-screen illustration is The Handmaid's Tale. I know a lot of people have seen The Handmaid's Tale. but the the dynamic between the main character, whose story is the one that's being told, and the wife, you know, the commander's wife, is the best depiction of that Jezebel Mother Mary conflict I've ever seen. You know, so for those of you who haven't seen The Handmaid's Tale, definitely go watch it. But you know what is essentially happening in that series is that you've got these two groups of women that are fighting each other, but at the end of the day, both of the groups of women are still have a subservient and oppressed position within their given society because of the men. So they're fighting each other, but that's not even the real enemy. I'm not even saying that the men are the enemy, because I'll never say that, and that's a whole other that's gonna be a whole other what kills sisterhood is internalized patriarchy. But what I'm saying is that when the two groups of women fight each other, they're not able to see the power that they have within themselves. You know, the fact that they don't even need to be fighting each other, because the Mother Marys have just as much of a place within society as the Jezebels, you know, and both groups need to honor each other, essentially. You know what I'm saying? So here's what it is. When back in the days when courtesans and sacred whores were more respected in society, they were the ones that were charged or responsible for training men how to serve and please their women. So back in the days, you know, when a man or boy was about to get married, because, you know, they had arranged marriages and they married young back in the days, and this is specifically within European culture, or European culture context, and there are some indigenous cultures that do this too, but I'm specifically speaking to Western culture. When a boy was about to get married, or in that age of puberty, his father would take him to a prostitute. And the woman would always be like 2-3 times older than him. You know, so here's this 14, 15-year-old boy going to like this 40-year-old woman, 30-year-old woman, and she would take his virginity, and she would engage him in a way where she would teach him how to properly please a woman. So then by the time he got married, he would be able to properly do that. That is the role of the Jezebel. That's the role of the sacred whore. You know, essentially, is to teach the men how to serve, teach the men how to please. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing demeaning about that. Just like a lot of the roles of the Mother Mary is to be the healer of the household, to have children if she chooses to have children, you know, to, you know, support her mate, to be the creator of the household. She has a sacred place too. So you have two groups of women who both have power, and each one is able to do the other. So a Mother Mary can very well be a Jezebel when she wants to, you know, and a Jezebel can very much become a mother, you know, and a healer of her household, if she, you know, and a householder period if she chooses to. You know what I mean? But each woman has a role that she's chosen, you know. So, you know, I took notes to make sure I stay on task. Here's the issue with slut shaming on a sisterhood scale and on a global scale. First of all, slut shaming is what really is that when women are shaming other women for their sexuality, what they're doing is what it really is that the person who's judging is uncomfortable with their own sexuality. They have shame within their own sexuality, and instead of them really addressing that, they want to project that shame onto someone else. You know, and again, there's a hostility, you know, towards the Jezebel, because that woman is that sister is representing putting up a mirror for what it is that we really want to be, essentially. So that's the reason why, you know, earlier I said that I don't have issues with women who are comfortable in their sexuality, because I'm comfortable in my sexuality. You know, so that's my mirror, and I honor that. I'm not threatened by that. You know, so you know, for one, you know, you're not dealing with your own issues with your sexuality. So then you want to make somebody else feel shame for hers. And that's not fair. That's not fair. And it creates a certain level of division that's not necessary, you know. And then two, this is specifically for Black women, specifically, the Jezebel archetype in the slut shaming perpetuates the stereotypes of Black women as being sexually promiscuous. So then what happens is that then the slut shaming goes into victim blaming, which I'm going to be a whole other sisterhood video about victim blaming. But when we slut shame our sisters, then it leads to the victim blaming. So when our sisters, you know, end up being assaulted by men, or, you know, victims of domestic violence, or, you know, being violated in any way, then the first thing we want to do is blame them for it, because, oh, she's a hoe. Oh yeah, she's promiscuous. She shouldn't have been wearing that. She shouldn't have been stripping. She shouldn't have been out on that stroll. You know what I mean? That's what she gets. And this dynamic is prevalent between mothers and daughters. There's a lot of reasons why mothers don't believe their daughters when their daughters say that they've been raped, specifically by members of the household, male members of the household, because at a certain age, when women, Black women, when we start to become, you know, mature, when we start going through puberty, we are automatically start to be slut shamed by our mothers. A lot of us have experienced that. Our mothers start to make us feel shame for growing breasts and growing hips and having hormones, and for men desiring us. You know, and we're only like 13, 14, or some of us are 10, like me. I was 10 when I started developing. A lot of us are young. You know, when we start developing, we don't know what the hell is going on. Our minds are not maturing at the same rate as our bodies. So we got grown woman bodies with children minds, and then we got mothers who are slut shaming us. And then where something happens where we're violated, our mothers aren't believing or aren't protecting. So this is what's the problem with slut shaming our sisters, and specifically Black women, because we already have a stereotype of being promiscuous. And so it perpetuates this idea that we should be violated, that we deserve to be violated, that we had it coming. You know, that we're here to be exploited. And you know, there's a lot wrong with that. That is a lot wrong with that. You know, slut shaming justifies rape. Slut shaming creates a whole other problem. Way bigger problems. So, again, you know, another thing with slut shaming is that it's an excuse for your lack of boundaries. Right? So remember when I said that, you know, Miss Jezebel started coming around to the crew when I was living in Vegas, and, you know, she started sleeping with a lot of the girls, you know, partners and things like that, and how she ended up sleeping with mine, and then we broke up. Well, here's the thing. I could be mad at her, but the reality is that I had fucked up boundaries. I should have stopped a lot of shit that I saw in the beginning. You know what I mean? And so if I had set boundaries, which is going to be probably the next sisterhood videos, boundaries. But if I had firmer boundaries, if I had called some shit out that I saw, I can't say it wouldn't have happened, but it'd have been a lot less likely that it would have happened. So what I'm saying is that when you have sisters coming around and they're actualizing their sexuality, and they're enticing your partners, or they're enticing whoever, you know, where are your boundaries? You're gonna get mad at her for being her, instead of sitting down and checking your own boundaries. Check your man, check your mate. You know, if you don't have an open relationship, check him or her, depending on how you swing, you know, but check your mate and see, like, and set that boundary. Set a boundary around the sister coming around. No, you can't come around. No, you can't be all up in my house. You know what I'm saying? No, you know, like, set boundaries. So anytime we slut shame, you know, we're really shirking and hiding from the fact that we don't know how to set proper boundaries. So we want to be mad at somebody else for being who they are. And, you know, lastly, slut shaming is internalized sexual oppression. You know, and again, it has a lot to do with oppression and suppression. You know, so like I said earlier, a lot of us are You know, all of us who slut shame are really just, you know, trying to project our own shame around our own sexuality. But also on the whole, we're sexually oppressed. Anyway, we live in a society where we're sexually repressed. And we're demonized for being sexual beings. So anytime that we demonize a sister, we're internalizing our own oppression. And so instead of really just, you know, seeking to liberate ourselves, explore our own sexuality, start to be more comfortable with who we are, you know, if you were just not into that, if that's just not you, you know what I'm saying, then honor, like, find what characteristics in that sister that you relate with on a positive level, you know. But, you know, so as women, we really have to understand that another woman's display of power does not diminish our own, specifically when it comes to sexual power. Okay? You've got some women who exert their power through their households, being mothers and wives, and that's their status, that's their power. And you got some women who exert their power through their sexuality, and that's their thing. But one does not diminish or take away from the other. And we really need to get away from shaming each other. You know, and I see it like every time I'm on Facebook and there's a post about, you know, a picture of a sister meme or whatever, half dressed, you know, and it's always the women who have the meanest and worst and most disrespectful comments. Men don't care. Men see a naked woman, they're like, most men don't, from what I've seen, don't feel like they're gonna disrespect a woman just because she's half naked. But it's our sisters that talk shit about her. And on top of that, if you got elders specifically that see young women who are into their sexuality and they're trying to explore it, help guide them. Don't shame them, guide them. Because like I said, that role is sacred. Our sexuality is sacred. That's how we heal. That's how we create. That's how we do magic. That's sacred. That needs to be cultivated and nurtured, not shamed. So if you got elders that are seeing these young girls getting into different sexual stuff, support them and guide them. Don't shame them. So that's all I got to say for now. I definitely appreciate you guys all, you know, watching and tuning in. Let me know what your thoughts are, you know, especially for this topic. And reach out to me if you have any questions. You know, email me, therapeuticvibrations@gmail.com. You can Instagram me, Chrysalis Sun, Facebook me, Chrysalis Sun. Check out my, you know, you can contact me through my website, bethevibe.com, and all that information will probably be below in the comments. But yes, please share in this dialogue. Reach out to me, let me know if you have any questions, and that's it. You know, so, you know, all I'm going to say, the last thing I'm going to say before I shut this down is, if you are a woman and you see another woman and you're bothered by her sexuality, then I invite you to sit down and take a look at how you relate to your own sexuality. That trigger is meant to bring to light how you feel about your own sexual power. All right? So that's it. Peace and blessings.